Good evening to everyone present here tonight. My name is Brian, and I will be your host for tonight. On behalf of the JPO family, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone tuning in for tonight's broadcast. We hope that everyone is doing well and staying safe indoors. A friendly reminder to maintain good hygiene at all times and maintain social distancing when heading out. As we'd like to continue improving your experience with us, please help us achieve this by completing the poll that will be published during this broadcast. To anyone who is interested in sharing tonight's broadcast, a live feed is being shared on the JPO YouTube channel. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to type them out in the Q&A section down below. For those of you joining us from YouTube, please type your questions down in the live chat down below. A recording of the webinar will also be uploaded onto the channel. Tonight's seminar features Madam Tasmin Little, OBE, with her topic being Discovery and Development, Music in the Modern Age. Tasmin Little has firmly established herself as one of today's leading international violinists. She has performed on every continent in some of the most prestigious venues of the world, including Carnegie Hall, Musikverein, the Royal Albert Hall, the Lincoln Center, and Suntory Hall. She has made concerto appearances with various world-renowned orchestras, such as the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, the Berliner Philharmoniker and Symphonica Orchestras, the Hong Kong Philharmonic Orchestra, the Singapore Symphony Orchestra, the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, the New Japan Philharmonic Orchestra, and all the BBC orchestras. Her multi-award-winning and varied career encompasses international concerto and recital performances, masterclasses, workshops, and community outreach work. Tasmin's discography and performance schedule reflect her wide-ranging repertoire. She has given numerous world premiere performances, whereby her newly commissioned work, 4 World Seasons by Roxana Panufnik, was premiered as a live broadcast on the BBC at the start of Music Nation weekend, leading up to the London 2012 Olympic Games. She remains as one of the few violinists to perform Ligeti's challenging violin concerto, and has performed this particular work at multiple world-class venues. Tasmin is also an exclusive recording artist for Chandos Records. Her recording of the Elgar Violin Concerto with Sir Andrew Davis and the Royal National Scottish Orchestra garnered outstanding critical acclaim and was awarded the Critics' Choice Award in the 2011 Classic Brit Awards. Other recordings throughout the years have received many praises, with some including the Sunday Times accrediting her work being the finest versions to ever be put on discs. Album awards also include a Gramophone Award for Audience Innovation for her groundbreaking musical outreach program entitled The Naked Violin. She was also awarded a Diapason d'Or for her disc of Delius Violin Sonatas with Piers Lane. The Naked Violin was carried out with the aim of breaking down barriers to classical music by releasing a free CD for download on her website and performing in the community where music is rarely heard. Within days of the CD's release, 6,500 websites had linked to Tasmin's site, and within a few months, more than 500,000 people have visited and downloaded the music. The project continues to be showcased in various parts of the world. Tasmin is also a fellow of the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, or FGSM for short. She's also the vice president of the Elgar Society, an ambassador for the Princess Foundation for Children and the Arts, and for youth music. She has received honorary degrees from the Universities of Bradford, Leicester, Hertfordshire, as well as the City of London. In 2016, she was awarded honorary membership of the Royal Academy of Music by the Academy and the University of London. Tasmin is also the recipient of the Gold Badge Award for Services to Music. In 2019, she won the BBC Music Magazine Personality of the Year Award. In 2012, Tasmin Little was also appointed an Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, or OBE for short, in the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Birthday Honours List for her services to music. As our JPO family attendees are mostly students ranging from primary school to college, their parents and their teachers, the sharing of knowledge and advice there for all of us today is invaluable and greatly appreciated. The JPO is very honored to have Tasmin Little join in as our guest for today. I hope they'll all join me in giving her a warm welcome. Without further ado, once again, a very good day to you, Tasmin. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hello, Brian. It's lovely to see you. And I see that your background is very familiar to me because it is the Guildhall School of Music in the Barbican, where, of course, I spent a happy 3 years in study. So thank you for making me feel at home, even though we're a long way apart.
Glad to hear the background is keeping you happy there. Well, hope you've had a good morning so far because it's afternoon where you are right now, isn't it?
It is. It's early afternoon on a rather dull, wintry London Sunday. It's trying to snow out there at the moment. So anyway, we'll see if it manages it by the end of the day.
All right. Well, to start off tonight's interview, what can you tell us about the videos that we had just watched early on?
Absolutely. Two very special memories for me, two very iconic venues. So the first video that we were watching was taken in the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, which is reputed to be one of the finest concert halls in the world. And Prokofiev's first concerto is a very dear concerto to me. I remember hearing it as a young child, and I always enjoyed Prokofiev's music as a young child. And symphonies were often played by my parents at home on the record player, and of course we all knew Peter and the Wolf and things like that. So Prokofiev was always a favorite composer. And I always wanted to be able to play his first violin concerto that I first studied when I was around 16 years old. But of course, when you're 16 and what you end up doing with it musically always does change and develop, which it must. And the second video that we were watching was of a very important and memorable concert that I did at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And it was part of the famous BBC Promenade concert series, which always have live broadcasts and an audience inside of around 6,000 people. And I remember when I first played at the Albert Hall in 1990, it was my very first prom. And the backstage is sort of rather low down, so you're walking up as you begin this walk, and it's quite a long walk on stage. And the first thing that you see, because it's a bit like a wedding cake inside with lots and lots of different tiers, so the first thing that I saw was just the top layer of my audience, and then gradually as I mounted this ramp I could see more and more people until finally you're up on the stage and you can see so many faces of the promenaders because they stand, or sometimes they sit on the ground, but generally they stand for the concert. There's no seating there, and they are really an integral part of the atmosphere in the Royal Albert Hall. They're absolutely amazing. There's people who go to every single prom throughout the entire I think it's eight weeks or so of concerts, and people devote their entire summer to it. So anyway, this performance in 2011 was really partly as a result of the recording that I made with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra and Sir Andrew Davis. And this was the one that won me this award. I don't know if you can see, it's a Classic Brit Award. And it was the critics' choice for that particular year of awards, and because the CD was such a great success, the proms director invited me and Andrew and the orchestra to give this performance that obviously, as you can see, was televised. They don't televise all of them, but they chose to televise this one, and I'm glad that they did, because I do remember this performance, and it's a monumental piece, the Algar. It lasts 55 minutes, and he saves some of the most difficult music right till the end. So, you've already been standing up for 45 minutes and playing almost non-stop. And then suddenly you've got this incredible virtuosic writing that is really challenging and very athletic. And so, yeah, I've always taken a very deep breath before beginning this journey of a violin concerto, but it's such a uniquely moving piece of music to play. And I do feel that performance that I gave was one of my best. So I'm happy to have it there up on YouTube for all time, as it were. Thank you for playing a bit of it.
Well, thanks for sharing it with us, and thanks for sharing the experience, your experience with those two videos. It was definitely very enlightening to hear all that. So yeah, it definitely is interesting to hear that the Elgar concerto left the most what do you call it? The most demanding part
Memorable
towards the end.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Well, it sort of sounds like he's trying to go out with a bang for that concerto, basically.
I think so. He had a long series of letters that he exchanged with the lady who really inspired him. She was something of a muse. Her name was Alice Stuart Wortley, and she was encouraging him while he was writing this concerto. And apparently he wrote to her saying, "This last movement's getting completely out of control, but I love it," you know.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. So yeah, moving on. So, as a highly seasoned musician, how do you go about selecting the repertoire that best suited you? Like even like the Elgar concerto, for example, even.
Yes, well, selecting repertoire, I think, has to be, first of all, a combination of what really speaks to you. And there's a certain amount of pragmatism involved because obviously, as one is growing up and learning the violin, you're gradually assimilating pieces of music that you can offer for performance to promoters. And so you can have all of these concertos, but even alongside that, many promoters have asked me to learn things especially for a specific concert or festival or whatever. So it's a combination of works that speak to me, and that I like, for instance, the Prokofiev, which I'd known for so many years as a child. I didn't get to know the Elgar until a lot later, but the Prokofiev was a concerto that I was desperate to learn as soon as I was able. So that's one aspect of it. Music always speaks to people in different ways, and so a performer must find the music that really speaks to them. But then it's a good thing to be introduced to different pieces of music by promoters who insist that you must play it for them. And so I've learnt many pieces that perhaps I wouldn't have come to so readily had it not been for an invitation to go ahead and learn it. And that goes for some recordings that I've made as well, although I generally prefer to make recordings of pieces that I've had many years of experience on stage performing. So for instance, by the time I recorded the Elgar concerto in 2010, I had been playing it for 20 years. And it's important with a huge and great work such as that you really do live with this music so that it becomes a part of you. And every time you play a piece of music with a different conductor or orchestra, they leave something of themselves inside you, which is fantastic, because I feel like my performances are a whole mixture of me, but there's little bits of, I can see David Atherton on the screen right now, and wonderful cellist Guy Johnson, and we played the Delius double concerto. All these people who I've worked with have left bits of their interpretation inside me, and I think that that's a really good thing for a musician, because it is important to keep on learning, to keep on assimilating new repertoire, and never to stand still.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Thanks for your outlook on selecting repertoire, Tasmin. So, do you have any tips on practicing? And in your opinion, does this have any dependence on one's identity as a musician? Because, as you mentioned earlier on, it definitely sounds like the selection of the repertoire definitely has an effect on how you develop as one.
Yes, there's a difference when you practice between coming back to a piece that you know very well and learning something from scratch. The process is somewhat different. Obviously, when you begin to learn a new piece of music, you have to look at the practicality of how are you going to get your hands around the instrument and create these sounds. And it is a musical process as well, whereby you are beginning to try to work out what you want to express in this music. So there's a lot of experimenting during practice and a lot of horrible notes and wrong things that come out, and then you just got to keep on picking yourself up and trying again until you get somewhere a little bit closer to what the composer wrote. When you come back to a piece that you know very well, the process is slightly different in that you already know musically what the piece is about, but you want to find different ways of expressing it as well. So whenever I have come back to a piece, and it could be something like the Bruch Violin Concerto that I first learnt when I was 12, and I've given over 100 concert performances of. And every performance of the Bruch has been unique because it's been with a different conductor, it's been with a different orchestra, in a different concert hall, on a different evening. Even if I've played the Bruch 3 nights in a row, the performance would never be the same and shouldn't be the same. The audience is different, the circumstances are different, what you ate for breakfast was different perhaps, and it's another day. So I think that when you're practicing, one of the main things that you really need to ask yourself is, if I'd never heard this piece in my life and this were the first time that I'm hearing it, am I being taken on a journey that makes sense? And we as performers, as interpreters, it's our job to be a little bit like a tour guide, that you've got your umbrella and you go, my party this way, and you are showing people how to navigate their way through a piece of music so that nobody feels lost, nobody feels left behind, nobody is not understanding what is happening and what their experience of the music should be. So obviously, whilst practicing, we're asking ourselves, or I'm asking myself, the question, does this make sense? It might make sense to me because I know it very well, but would it make sense if you'd never heard it before? So to listen always with new ears, with interested, intrigued new ears, with a sense of adventure and exploration. So that's part of the overall umbrella of practice, where you're thinking of your interpretation in terms of the audience's perspective. But then, of course, as we know, anybody that plays a musical instrument is more than aware that you start out learning the basics and you try and try and try to get better and more accurate and more expressive and find more colors in your instrument. And this is a lifelong process, of course, and that's an exciting part of the process as well. But practice can be just as simple as working out the distance between 2 notes so that you can accurately get from one to the other. I do have a couple of things to share which are practical for anybody that is watching and wondering how they might improve their practice skills. So it's very often the case that the problem is not where you think it is. So let's imagine that you start with one note in, say, first position on the violin, and you've got to shift to, I don't know, 6th position somewhere. And you arrive there and the note is out of tune. Maybe it's flat or maybe it's sharp. And you might think that it's the note that's flat or sharp that's the problem, but it isn't. It is always just before that moment where it went wrong. So your diagnosis of the problem should actually be occurring before the problem that you hear, because what you hear is only the result of what you didn't do quite right. And it's the bit that we didn't do quite right that we need to adjust, not the problem, because that's the result. So for instance, if you shift and you're flat and you think, why is that note flat? Then you go back one stage and you think, it was flat because I didn't move my elbow around to allow myself free rotation. And there is a point where your fingers end. You can't just go like that and hope that you're going to hit a top note. You must pivot and move the arm around with flexibility. It very often involves this elbow as well. So you need to know that if you're going to make a smooth shift, the shift begins from the note before the one you want to get to. So a little bit like Sherlock Holmes, if you like, your large magnifying glass shouldn't look at the bit that sounds wrong. You are looking for a clue leading up to the bit that sounded wrong, if that makes sense. I hope it does. And then the other thing is that I'm a great believer in breaking problems into smaller chunks. So for instance, many violinists will be familiar with the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. And in the last movement, there's a lot of fast passage work, lots and lots of semiquavers that go on and on and on for a very long time. Now, if you look at this entire passage that probably lasts about 5 or 6 lines of constant semiquavers, you might think, well, I'm never going to be able to play that. But it's not that we can't play one note or even the next note. What it is the combination of notes put together that can, first of all, be overwhelming. And secondly, the tendency can be to think too far in advance. So if you break a problem down into just 2 notes, the chances are those 2 notes are not going to be the problem. You can possibly even manage a third or a fourth. Now, what happens between the 4th and the 5th note might be the problem. So you don't need to worry about notes 1, 2, and 3. Head straight to notes 4 and 5 or 5 and 6, because isolate the problem, solve that bit, and then add either side. So that you're not always, because I think a lot of people think it's necessary to keep on repeating stuff over and over again. That way you can just end up practicing your mistakes, and that's not very helpful in terms of developing. What you really need to do is engage your brain, because practice is a mixture of the physical and the mental. If you understand what should happen in your brain, the chances are your brain is going to fire up the correct messages to your fingers and allow them to do their job. So I always advocate isolating, well, first of all, working out where the real problem is. So it could be that, da, da, da is fine, but da, 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 and then you have a problem. So just do the da, da, and then take it back step by step. And before you know where you are, you have a chunk of notes that you can play. Also the same if you have, for instance, an arpeggio. Chances are, if you started on the lower end of the instrument, you can play those because the first few notes are likely to be in first position. So the problem is going to be a little later as you're trying to work your way up along the fingerboard and get to the higher reaches of the instrument. So you don't always need to start from first position. Start further up and then work backwards. So I hope some of those thoughts might be illuminating for some of your players.
I'm sure they will definitely appreciate your advice, and many thanks for the analogies as well. Those are definitely interesting analogies to the issues. So yeah, with that, I think before we move on, I'd just like to remind our audience, if you have any questions for Tasmin, please leave them in the Q&A section for Zoom, or if you're on YouTube, leave your questions down in the chat. So yeah, with that, I think we'll move on. So with the next question, with the growing presence of the internet in our everyday lives, how significant is this to a musician's development? other than the practice like you were mentioning earlier on.
Indeed, indeed. Well, I do think that music is now much more readily available because of the internet and because of the quantity of material that is up on and available for free. It's interesting because when I began my naked violin project, I have another medal for you, by the way. Here's my Gramophone Award for
Okay.
audience innovation for my naked violin project. Now, I began this project in early 2008 when there was very, very limited material available online for free. Now, of course, we tend to take YouTube and everything and Spotify and all these sorts of things for granted, but it just wasn't there, which was what was groundbreaking about my naked violin project, because it was proper recorded. Well, I was going to say disc, except it wasn't. It was virtual, but it was a properly professionally recorded set of pieces that was available for people to download and enjoy for free. So I was using the internet to help reach out to people in a way that, first of all, was easy for them. Secondly, didn't have any constraints of time zones or anything like that, because people could go to it whenever they wished. And there was even if you had a computer or a laptop or something that was in the middle of almost nowhere, as long as you've got internet access, then obviously it was possible to listen to my recorded works, Bach and Paul Patterson and Eugene Isaïe. So I used this tool of the internet to try to really reach people that otherwise I'd never be able to reach. So I think it's very important that we allow our audiences opportunities to experience something of the magic of music, even if they can't get to anything that's live. I mean, I personally always believe that live entertainment is the best, but it's not always practical. And the internet allows us to experience things, and it's a wonderful library now that is available. And I think that it's also helpful for young musicians in terms of seeing how they respond to other young players. There's such a wealth of amazing old videos of people that you can see, people who've been long dead, and you can hear great masters of previous eras, and that's wonderful. So it's a tool for us to learn as well. And I think it's also a mirror for us that we can assess ourselves, and any musician must continue to assess themselves, because that's how we continue to develop. So yeah, I think that the internet is a real force for good, and it's a marvelous means of really expanding out to the far reaches of our wonderful planet.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Tasmin. And thanks for sharing the Gramophone Award as well. I did want to bring it up as well.
I've got one more. I have one more medal. Do you want to see my OBE?
Yeah,
So
that
the
was what I wanted to
Queen
ask about
gave
as well,
me my.
actually.
So it's in a box that looks
Okay.
like this, and I'm going to open it up. You can see what's inside.
Okay. That's nice. That's a really good. That's a really nice looking medal. So, yeah.
It's a very big medal as well.
So did they award you? So did they award you with the OBE and the Gold Award for your services to music because of the Naked Violin project, or was it because of accumulative?
I think it's more accumulated. There's in Great Britain, there's various sort of levels that you can attain. First is MBE, which is Member of the British Empire. Then there's the OBE, which is the Order, and then there's the CBE, which is Commander, and then if you're a man, there's the KBE, which is a Knight. If you're a woman, is a DBE, where you're a Dame. So yes, it's for services to music, which was really my career, not anything specific, but just what I had achieved up until 2012.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. It was definitely an interesting thing to read up on as well.
Thank you.
All right. So, just going back to the question earlier on regarding the effects of the internet on how musicians have to adapt. How about yourself? How have you, as a classically trained musician, adapted to the growing development of the internet age? And do you have any other tips for the up and coming musicians other than what you've mentioned earlier on?
Well, obviously, because of the naked violin, this was a major way that I adapted to the internet, and I would say that that was the biggest thing that I did, because it was so far-reaching and it was very ahead of its time. Um, and I mean, I have a YouTube channel, but there's not an awful lot up on there. But it's more to do with social media, where I try to get various messages across on Twitter, or on my Facebook page, to try to make things available. And it can be to help musicians if they don't know that there's a particular, I don't know, law to do with traveling to a certain country, or something that's changed where it's important for people to understand that there might be new laws or restrictions or something like that. But more recently, because of the pandemic, I've used the internet to try to plead the case for musicians who were completely out of work, and in this country, completely out of work with absolutely no government support whatsoever. And it went on for a very long time. So I took to the internet and to radio to try to plead, and raise awareness for the plight of many musicians, because many people were having to sell their instruments just to pay their bills, and or taking jobs driving lorries, so that, or trucks for delivery and stuff like that. And all along we know that you have to keep on practicing even if you haven't got any work. You can't just go, well, let me take 6 months off and then remember how to be a concert violinist. So it's been a time of great hardship. So I suppose the other biggest way I've adapted to using the internet has been to try to become something of a spokesperson for the profession. As far as advice for your listeners and viewers, I think one of the most important things about being a performing musician is that you have to really understand who you are and what you want to express, because we won't really play a piece of music terribly well unless we have an idea about it and a response to it. And often that will be an emotional response. It can be an intellectual response as well. If you're analyzing a piece of music, we've all analyzed Bach fugues and things like that. And of course, you look at the mathematics of it all and you go, wow, that's incredible. But I think our primary response as human beings to music is emotion. And so we must get in touch with our emotions. And as far as our using the internet to be a real tool for helping get our message across, I think authenticity and sincerity is the most important thing. So whatever you put out online, it must come from within you. It cannot come from a place of artifice.
Hmm. All right. Well, thanks for sharing your insight on the matter with us, Tasmin. So yeah, just to add on a bit to what you were mentioning earlier on, because you were mentioning how like during difficult times, like people had to, like musicians in particular, have to struggle to actually try to keep up and try to keep themselves developing as musicians. So how about with the world as it is today, with with the COVID-19 pandemic still on the rise in various corners of the world? So how would you suggest these musicians make the most of their time if they have any, like you mentioned?
Yes. Yes. Well, obviously, it is very difficult to remain motivated when well, perhaps you've lost all your work, or you have no opportunity to make music with colleagues or friends. And so motivation, I think, is a big problem. And one of the ways that I think this can be helped and alleviated is that we need to remain connected to ourselves, but to others. And I think that this can be done through really exploring different areas of the repertoire and perhaps doing that alongside a group of friends or colleagues. So to, for instance, do the equivalent of a book club where you can choose a piece of music that you might all explore together and listen to together and share thoughts on, so that we're still growing and developing as musicians, that we are continuing our efforts to be the best musicians we can be, to be the broadest musicians we can be. Because let's say, for instance, that as a violinist, the only piece of Tchaikovsky I knew was his violin concerto. Wow, what a world of Tchaikovsky I would be missing out on. And I think, any musician will play the Tchaikovsky violin concerto better if they know all of his symphonies and an awful lot of other stuff as well. So exploring more about composers that we love and the music that hasn't been written necessarily for our own instrument, I think is a very good place to start, because it keeps us feeling like we're on this journey and feeling adventurous within what is admittedly a very constrictive time in our lives. We are not supposed to go out, we are not supposed to see anybody, but what we still can do, thanks to the wonders of the internet, is share, as we are doing today, Brian. We can share thoughts and experiences and stay positive through remaining connected.
Thanks for that, Tasmin. That was definitely a very inspiring outlook of things regarding the current situation. So yeah, and thanks for that, Tasmin. So with that, I think we have about time for one last question before we move on to the Q&A section.
Yeah.
So this is one from the JPO. So as you may have heard, the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra, or JPO, has involved itself in a variety of activities. So on behalf of the JPO, and with your own experiences with outreach work, the Naked Violin, we would like to ask about your views on the JPO and its activities. Additionally, how would you suggest that the JPO further improve itself?
Well, when I was sent the list of JPO activities, I felt so happy to read of the difference that you are making, the connections that you're helping people to achieve, particularly in the outreach work. I found that very moving indeed. And I would like to congratulate you on everything that you are achieving and that you are continuing to try to achieve. So well done. These are important things to keep on striving for. And I'm very happy to read about it. And also the fact that you wish to make music exams a little more accessible and affordable for people, if it's difficult for them to find a means to gain certificates. And I think we all need to feel as though we are progressing. And if you have attained grade 1 violin or grade 5 violin or whatever, it's a well-deserved pat on the back. And it is it's the equivalent of this, isn't it? That's my pat on the back for working hard. And we all need encouragement. We all need to feel that we are working and striving and attaining. So I'm very happy to know of the different orchestras that you run and all the musicians that you are reaching. As far as anything further that you can do, I don't know. I was just going to say carry on, because it all, I think it's such a great job that you're doing. So obviously the only thing that you can do is continue to reach even more people who perhaps haven't got the means to play an instrument or to listen to music, just so that there are as few barriers as there possibly can be.
All right. Well, thanks for your advice there, Tasmin. I'm very sure Teacher Outling is happy to hear all your comments on this. So yeah, thanks again. With that, I think we'll have to move on to the Q&A section. So we do have a few messages coming in from the chat. So we have a Diego Zacharies on YouTube saying that Oh, this is a very interesting interview. Congratulations. Maybe these
Thank you,
one.
Diego.
All right, with that, we have a few questions. Oh, we have one person. Oh, give me a sec. Okay, so we have one of the viewers asking about one of the pictures that was being shown early on. If we could have that picture on the screen right now. Yep. Okay. So they're asking about this photo. What can you explain to us about this particular photo? Like, who are these? Who are these people with you?
Well, the gorgeous lady on the right is Roxana Panufnik, the composer, who wrote the Four World Seasons for me. And as you can see, she is a bundle of joy, and her music is so expressive. She's very interested in world music. So the Four World Seasons that she wrote for me each take place in a different country. So it's autumn in Albania. Tibetan winter with a beautiful Tibetan singing bowl, spring in Japan, and Indian summer. So they're very colourful and vibrant pieces. In the middle, we can see David Curtis, and he, alongside myself, ran the festival in Stratford-upon-Avon called Spring Sounds. And that was where I premiered most of the Four World Seasons. So that's what that photograph is about.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that experience with us. Yeah. Okay. So now we know who is the one that who composed the four
Four World
seasons
Seasons.
all the seasons
Yes.
for you.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, she wrote a marvelous piece for violin called Hora Bessarabia, which was in fact composed for the 2016 Yehudi Menuhin International Violin Competition. But I loved it so much that I went ahead and learnt it myself. And for any violinists who want an interesting 5-minute solo violin piece, which also demands a little bit of foot tapping, then I do suggest that you go and look out for Roxana's piece. So it's called Hora, which is Hora, Bessarabia, which is Bessarabia. So enjoy, because it's a terrific piece. I saw that there's a couple in the Zoom chat. We've got a couple of questions. I can't see them at the moment because of the screen sharing. Would it be possible to go back to the chat so that I can read out? Because there's one, Tasmin, do you think it's necessary for soloists to have their selection of repertoire that people can relate or get acquainted with? Maybe something like your signature piece people can associate you with. Well, that's very similar to the question, do you have a favorite piece of music? Which is a question I've never really been able to answer, because the great thing about playing the classical violin is that we've got more than 300 years of amazing repertoire. How can I choose from between Bach and Elgar or Brahms and Schubert? It's impossible. I do think that Brahms is one of my most favorite composers, and also Sibelius, that both of their violin concertos are monumental pieces of music, and I recorded both of them. So you might like to head along somewhere, either online or Spotify or on a CD, and check those out. And I can see also Anonymous, hello, when you perform the same piece many times, would you say your later performances are definitely better than those previously performed? Oh, yes, definitely. No question at all, because as we were talking about earlier, it's very important as an artist to continue to develop as a person and as a musician. So there are a few works that I have made 2 recordings of, and the later versions are unquestionably the better ones. And all the critics that ever reviewed them said that they were better. So I don't just think it's me that thought that. I do feel as I became more mature, and that's really what it's about. As you gain in maturity and experience, you're going to bring that to the music. And I see one.
Sorry to cut you off the Tasmin, because the person did teacher Yapling did actually expand on this a bit. Has this always been the case regarding the previous question? Is it always the case that the later one would be the better performance?
I think without question, yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
All right.
I can see also one more. Is it necessary to reinterpret after performing the same concertos pieces for many times? I reinterpret every time, every single time. Yes, I think it is essential. Otherwise, I think we will stagnate as a player. If you cannot find something new in a piece of music, then stop playing it.
All right. Well, with that, I think we've just about run out of questions. Do we have any more? Let me just check a little bit on YouTube. All right. Okay. I think with that, I think we've just about run out of questions from the audience today. So yeah, once again, many thanks for sharing your insight to everything, to all your responses as well, Tasmin. So once again, sorry everyone, but we are coming to the end of tonight's broadcast. We would like to remind everyone that our JPO family program will be broadcasted twice a week until further notice. So join us next time with our next guest, who will be revealed at a later date. So more details on this can be found on our Facebook page. A video recording of tonight's broadcast will also be available on the YouTube channel, along with the past webinars and the soon to be broadcasted interviews. So feel free to share the Zoom webinar registration link, the JPO YouTube channel, and the JPO Facebook page with your friends and family. So for our YouTube audience, if you are enjoying our program, please show your support to us by pressing the like and subscribe button down below. And if you are interested in looking at more of Tasmin's works, I'm pretty sure you can take a look at her website or even her YouTube channel. So yeah, you guys have been an amazing audience. And we from the JPO family wishes that everyone stays safe and healthy as we continue to face this crisis together. So Tasmin will now be leading a prayer to end tonight's program, or in her case, this afternoon. So please pray in whatever faith you believe in regarding the COVID-19 pandemic.
I would like to invite everyone to stay safe, to always be as kind as you possibly can and supportive. I pray for all those who have lost their loved ones and who are facing a difficult future because of the pandemic. I pray that we all remain connected to each other and that we can look after each other and stay well ourselves. Take care, everybody, and I wish you well.
Thanks for that, Tasmin. So yeah, with that, I think that's the end of tonight's program. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Tasmin, for joining us.
My pleasure, Brian. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Likewise. Well, have a good day, Tasmin, and good night to everyone. And we hope to see you all again next time. See you.